So, Tiffany, thank you for joining us on Pegasus Pros.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a video series that we do with professionals where we try and get to know them, their field, and sometimes we drink, sometimes we don't. Today we are not drinking, only because of the setting. So, you're an attorney, and you and I have known each other for a number of years.
Yeah, we have. Now that you
I wasn't going to put the number of years out there,
nope, we don't have to do that.
but we have known each other a while. And what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself, name of your firm, and we'll go from there.
My name's Tiffany Griffin. I am an attorney here in Media, Pennsylvania. I run my own practice, Griffin Law Group, which is located on 110 West Front Street, right out front of the courthouse.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, Tiffany, you practice a couple of different types of law. You practice divorce and you practice criminal defense, which are very different.
Yeah. It's funny that you kind of bubble them into divorce and then criminal defense. I do.
Well, I've gone through a divorce. I've never been a criminal. So.
Oh, well, but I do a gambit of family law things. And family law, under the umbrella of family law, encompasses divorces, custody battles, child support, and PFAs and things like that.
See, I didn't mind the child support. You know? That was for the care of the kid.
Okay, yeah. We also do alimony.
Yeah.
All right.
That was 11 years ago. I ain't worried about that now.
Yeah.
But you did mention alimony and I mentioned child support. In your experience, when it comes to finances and how couples manage their finances, how often do you see that as a reason why the couple gets divorced?
That, honestly, I think that is not, it's not, sometimes it's not the main reason, but it is a pretty big factor that plays into the reasons that couples come into my office for a consultation or wanting to know a little bit more information about divorce. And I've seen where people are concerned with finances because the other spouses maybe they've been a little bit too spin happy, and so they want to know. They want to take a look at their like if they were to go through with this process, and sometimes it's necessary. But when they're ready to go through with the process of seeking a divorce, what is that going to look like for them financially? How much should I be prepared for to put down on a retainer? How long is the divorce process going to be, and is that going to affect my finances even further? And most times the answer is yes, it can. It's not a really, it's in law, I've found that everything is black and white. It's not really a cut and dry most days. And I know a lot of people want a cut and dry yes or no answer, but it's really hard to pin it down to yes. The safer answer is yes if.
Right.
Yeah, because there's a number of different possibilities that could happen. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
It does.
Okay.
So you were talking about how people want cut and dry answers. And I know from personal experience that it does, a lot of it depends. What are you fighting for?
Yeah.
I found that child support was a little more easier. It was like, how much do you make?
Yeah.
Divided.
Yeah.
It's simple math.
Yeah.
The math is going math.
Yeah.
But I know in my experience as a financial advisor, one of the things I had someone come to me about one time was they wanted to hide assets. And I was like, I'm not going to be part of that. But I'm sure in your experience, you are on the other side of that, trying to find out if the person's hiding assets or what to do when you find out that they have been hiding assets.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, one, why is it important not to try and hide assets during a divorce? And then two, when you do find that the other person's hiding the assets, what happens?
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. if I, especially depending on how large the asset that's been hidden is, it's not going to be pretty, and it's just not going to be pretty. It can affect equitable distribution. There's a stage in the divorce when it comes to dividing assets, and that I'm definitely going to hone down on that in the courtroom in front of a judge or a hearing officer and let them know that the percentage should be higher for my client based on this factor because we've had to do, all of the things that we had to do to discover this asset. If it was sometimes sending out subpoenas, sending out, all of these things, like we talked about earlier when we were discussing finances of how long this divorce could take and if it was going to draw out, if it was taking longer, if that was going to be more money. Well, this is one of the if possibilities.
Right.
So if I find an asset, depending on where we are in the stage of the divorce, it could look different. For example, if we're in the beginning phases, then it'll look different versus if we're on the eve of trial or
Yeah.
on the eve of a hearing.
You don't want that surprise at the end.
No.
It's better to disclose it up front.
Yeah. So I would encourage to all of my clients and opposing everybody to just be honest. It would be a lot painful, less expensive for you, and we can just get through the divorce a little bit faster if we're just upfront and honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had a boss that was pretty successful, and he and his spouse had a rough relationship, but he would always say it was cheaper to keep her. And so, in your experience, both as the cost of the divorce, but then also knowing that you have this equitable distribution, how often do you either find yourself talking to someone who does say, "Hey, mate's just cheaper to keep her," or cheaper to keep him, or I don't want to change my lifestyle, because all these things go into a divorce,
Right. No.
and that's before you start talking about the kids.
Yeah.
So,
well, so if the phrase or the theme when I'm doing my consultation is, would it be cheaper to stay married? Then I would have to look at what we're spending, like what is your other spouse spending, and what are you possibly going to lose if we push forward with the divorce. And so the answer can be different depending on what the prospective client's financial portfolio is looking like.
mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's important to look at the dynamics of the married couple. So if, for example, if you're in my office and your husband or you're the spouse that has a higher earning capacity and the other spouse doesn't work at all or sometimes work, or their main function in the marriage was to take care of the household and the children and all the other things like that,
mm-hmm.
then yeah, I would tell you it might be cheaper to stay married, but at what cost?
Right.
Everybody has a limit and a breaking point, right?
Right. And it's the emotional toll.
Yeah, and if you're in my office, I mean, I don't want you to be. I love. But if you're in my office and it's not working out and you're having these conversations, then it might be something to look into, what that would look like as far as how much is this going to hurt my wallet?
Yeah.
Type thing. But at the end of it, it's like paying for a nice little light at the end of the tunnel. Because it might hurt now, but it won't hurt as much emotionally or
right.
in the long run. You know what I mean? And in the divorce, or the whole process could be expensive up front, but long term, what are we looking at long term?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. Like
I had an
divorce.
umpire once, and I was playing softball at the time, and he told, I don't know why he decided to volunteer this, but he was saying how he had recently gotten divorced, but him and his ex-wife were still living together. And then I heard that on the radio last week also, that the guy was like, yeah, we've been divorced for a couple of years, but we still live together. And so do you find that people get divorced, but because they can't afford to live separately, or to get rid of the house or to buy the other person out of the house, they still end up in the same situation?
All the time.
But
all the time people, clients go through the divorce process, and I commend the ones or the clients that can go through the entire divorce process and be in the same house with each other while they're still, while we're serving all of these papers
Yeah.
and documents on the other side. Um, I mean, I have so much respect for those parties, but yeah, sometimes like two healthy individuals can come together and see that this isn't working, but
Yeah.
also that their finances, it just would make sense financially for you to take maybe the finished basement or maybe this part of the house and you know I'll have to say that in those situations, in those rare situations where people can put their, because
Hmm.
it's emotional, and when you can, kind of put your emotion to the side and do what's best for you both, and sometimes what's best for the children, and let's be honest, what's best for your wallet, you can make those, you can make those decisions with a clear conscience, and and it makes the divorce process go a lot faster and smoother, and
Yeah.
it's less expensive on the divorce front. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
And so, you know, everybody's, you're getting the divorce, but it's not the end all be all, because you're still walking away with some money left in your pocket
Yes.
and a place to stay.
All right. So, a lot of times when I'm talking to clients, they're at different stages of their life. And a lot of times they're coming out of college for the younger professionals that I have.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have for young attorneys that are either going into law school or coming out of law school?
Well, first off, I would like to say I'm still young.
Well, you're always going to be younger than me,
No, but
but you're a lot younger than me.
no, but honestly, anybody that's considering law school or considering a legal field, excuse me, I would really encourage you to, and I do wish I had done this, several things, or at least two things, is to try all different types of law while you're in law school, or all different types of committees and fellowships and just anything that you can, and even classes, like take as many law, like a diverse number of classes. You have your core things that you have to take in law school, but if
Hmm.
there's any extra thing that you can do, because I would try all different types of law to figure out exactly what you like. Because for the most part, there are a lot of just niches out
Hmm.
after law school, and you don't really get to try anything else different once you get into that niche, unless you find a general practice firm. But for the most part, once you're done, you're kind of
You're there.
that's your thing.
Yeah.
And if that's your thing, that's great. But to really try to do a ton of different avenues while you're in law school to try to figure out what you really like in classes and CLEs and things like that.
Well, there's a time and place for everything. It's called college.
Yeah, yeah. But you asked about law school specific,
Yeah.
right? And then the second piece of advice that I would give is to really to once you find that thing that you like, to go watch an attorney or somebody do it. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And you never stop learning
Okay.
a thing.
Yeah.
Like especially in the legal world, that you're going to see that you're required to continue learning, and the laws change, so that's why you're going to need to learn. But if it's something that you really want to do and you're really passionate about it, I would encourage you to find what you like
Okay.
about the law and hold on to that.
All right. So thank you for coming. I
Yeah, thank you
really
for having
appreciate you
me.
doing this with me,
Yeah,
and sharing your insights.
anytime, anytime.
How would people find you if they needed your services?
Well, I'm in Media, Pennsylvania, but you can always go to my website, which is griffinlawpa.com. That is Griffin with an IN, like the bird, Griffin, lawpa.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.